Hey guys, I wanted to do a discussion about Sukuna versus Gojo versus Dabura because these three have been discussed a lot in terms of their capabilities thanks to JJK Modulo. Alright, so I'm going to be doing a 10-point system. I know that people usually do WIS edits, but I feel like it's a bit unfair to only award 1 point for each category win. And the rules of a WIS edit are a bit vague at times. They're used very differently. I do think that's usually because the editors they never really agreed on a single method to creating WIS edits, which I think is completely fair. Because not everyone needs to go all in on that kind of stuff. Some people just want to edit and make the thing look nice. But I want to do a fair comparison, so I'm doing a 10-point system. Now, a 10-point system, I don't even know if it's actually a thing people use, but I do think it's much more fair than just doing a WIST style edit. Um, a 10-point system is basically a system where you award the characters a number out of 10 based on their performance against the other characters. So Gojo would get a 10 out of 10 for CE efficiency because of his 6 eyes. But then you'd have to award points to Sukuna and Dabura in terms of their CE efficiency as well. And then you'd have to give them points based on how large of a gap do you think Gojo eclipses them in that particular category. All right, so I'm already going to give Gojo 10 out of 10 for his CE efficiency because obviously his 6 eyes technique, 6 eyes gives him a perfect 10 out of 10. He's never going to run out of cursed energy. Okay. I should also add output on the sleeve. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So I know I started off a bit in the middle of the list, but let's actually get through it now. CT. So obviously the limitless curse technique is the best curse technique on this list. All right. It is easily the best curse technique out of these three. The fact of the matter is that the limitless curse technique is just so overpowered that you need a curse technique that can literally bypass it. Your technique must bypass it to do any damage to Gojo, okay? However, the problem is that there is an argument to be made that Dabura himself can actually bypass Gojo's infinity. And you might be thinking, what? That doesn't make any sense. It blocks all attacks, true. But that is not the way that Gojo uses his limitless technique. Alright? The way Gojo uses his limitless technique is his 6 eyes automates the process, analyzing what's a threat and what's not a threat. Right? So when you throw a rubber at him, like a little eraser, it does nothing. It gets right through the infinity because it's not assessed as a threat. Alright? When you throw a pen at him, or a knife, or whatever you want to call it, it's going to get stopped because the 6 eyes registers it as a threat. All right, and the 6 eyes is indicative of Gojo's perception. Now, the issue with this entire thing is that nowhere in the JJK manga have Sukuna or Gojo ever shown to be able to react to light speed attacks. They have never ever been shown to be able to do that. And you might be saying, well, Dabura needs to wind up his attack to get to light speed. Sure, that's true. But the fact of the matter is that this does not apply to his projectile light attacks. And you might be saying, no, it was stated that he couldn't get to light speed. The problem is with that statement is that the manga literally states that his body couldn't withstand light speed. It never stated anything about his projectile attacks. And Dabura uses projectile attacks during the Maharaga fight early on in the chapter. And you can see how fast that is. He unleashed like 20, more than 20 attacks in under a single panel, which is insanity. So you could make the argument that, honestly, that Dabura actually has a win con and he can get right past Gojo's infinity. Okay. So the win con category is honestly like each of them have to. It's more of a win con against Gojo in this setting, because Gojo himself doesn't need win cons against the other two since he has damage. He doesn't have to bypass anything. It's more of Sukuna and Dabura having to go up against Gojo and figuring out how to bypass this infinity. So when we're talking about win cons, Dabura, I would say this is a bit iffy because if Dabura unleashes his light projectiles from the front sight, so if he literally does it just from in front of Gojo, then I could see Gojo's Six Eyes registering the attack and basically nullifying it via Infinity. But if Dabura ever gets behind Gojo even once, then his attacks are getting through Infinity, without a doubt. Alright? So his win con isn't nearly as good as Sukuna's because he has to catch Gojo off guard. The issue is that Gojo has lost multiple times because of being caught off guard. He lost against Toji because he was caught off guard. He lost against Kenjaku because he was caught off guard. Kenjaku literally sealed him because of that. And he also lost against Sukuna because he was caught off guard. It is a growing trend of Gojo getting caught off guard. And this is very much due to his own arrogance. And I don't mean that to spite Gojo or say that he's a bad person or whatever. It's just a personality trait that he has. He's very egotistical and arrogant. That doesn't make him a bad person. It just makes him who he is. It's part of who he is. Okay, and it's a personality flaw that will cost him dearly in this matchup. So Sukuna's win con against Gojo is, I would say, an 8 out of 10. Okay, because Sukuna's win con against Gojo is very problematic because he has to do an entire incantation and hand signs to unleash the world cutting slash, and that is his literal only win con apart from DA, domain amplification. If it was just the world cutting slash, his rating wouldn't be 8, it would be maybe a 6. Because Gojo can probably dodge the world cutting slash as the author directly stated that Gojo probably would have dodged if he wasn't caught off guard. So this is indicative of Gojo being able to dodge the world cutting slash, which means that it is not nearly as good of a win con as people say it is. His win cons are getting boosted due to domain amplification. And domain amplification will allow him to hit Gojo, even though his infinity is on. Alright? On top of that, having 4 arms is pretty good in combination with domain amplification. So we're giving him an 8 in terms of win cons. For Dabura, we are giving him I would say maybe a 6 or a 7. Right? I'll say 7. Dabura's win con is a lot easier to pull off, but it's still a bit iffy because we don't actually know how good Gojo's reaction time is. So we don't actually know if he would get caught off guard by a. Actually, considering the things he has gotten caught off guard by, and where he's not reacting in time, I think we can say that he's probably getting So we're gonna give that a rating of 9, actually, because honestly, it's a lot easier to pull off. It's a lot easier to pull off, much easier actually. But yeah, so that's that. In terms of Gojo, in terms of win cons, I think we can give him a perfect 10 because he doesn't need win cons against these other two because they don't have abilities that really need win cons against. He can damage them perfectly fine as long as he can hit them, right? Then we're going to go. So in terms of CT, you could make the argument that Dabura's light technique is actually better than Limitless. So because of that, right, I'm going to give this a bit more of a tie kind of circumstance, where I do think that Gojo's Infinity is his Limitless technique is better, but I'm going to make it very close with Dabura getting a 9 and Gojo getting a 10. Okay. As for Sukuna's techniques like Cleave, Dismantle, and Fuga, I do think they are extremely good techniques, but I do not think that they are anywhere near these two, so I'm going to give him a 7. or maybe a 6 actually. Yeah. Now you might be thinking, what are you talking about? All right, Sukuna's technique is really good, but the problem is that Sukuna's technique is purely offensive. He has no defensive techniques. He has no speed techniques in his CT. Meanwhile, Gojo and Dabura can use their techniques for pretty much anything they need. The only thing that Dabura lacks in terms of his curse technique is his defensive capabilities. His light technique doesn't give him any defensive capabilities. Gojo's gives him offense, defense, speed, reaction time, anything he needs, which makes his CT pretty much perfect. Okay, so we're definitely giving Sukuna a 6 because his technique is purely offensive, and every other stat that he has is not based on his CT and is based on his natural physique and hard work. Okay. In terms of damage output, I'm giving it to Dabura. And you might be saying, why are you giving it to Dabura? Sure, he did that amazing attack, but Gojo and Sukuna also have amazing attacks. But let's actually go through this a bit, alright? Let's look at Dabura's feat in terms of his light speed kick, okay? His light speed kick had a bit of wind up, okay? He had to run really fast and eventually reach sublight speed to unleash that attack, okay? That is a condition for his technique, of his light speed kick technique. Let's call it that for now, all right? That is a condition, but it is not a difficult condition to reach, all right? Now let's look at Sukuna's technique. Now Sukuna's highest damage output technique is his Fuga technique, or domain expansion, but I genuinely think that Fuga is a better technique in terms of damage output. Because Sukuna's domain expansion is lots of cuts directed at a single opponent, while his Fuga just obliterates everything in the vicinity of the attack, the landing of the attack. So I do think that Fuga is definitely Sukuna's best technique in terms of damage output. Let's look at the conditions for Sukuna's damage output at its highest scale. The conditions are that he needs to cut his opponent with cleave or dismantle, and then he can use Fuga on them whenever he wants. It is extremely good. Those conditions are not as difficult as to meet as Gojo's, and I will explain Gojo's conditions later. But this is incredibly impressive considering everything. And now let's scale their techniques, alright? Dabura's lightspeed kick is bare minimum multi-city block with how much damage that it was outputting. Okay? You see the panel and you see how much damage he was outputting. It is at minimum, maybe city block or possibly even multi-city block. Okay? That is the kind of damage range that you'll be expecting from Dabura in terms of the lightspeed kick. Then let's look at Sukuna. In terms of Sukuna, you could highball it and max it to multi-city block or city block. So you're basically saying that what I'm saying is basically Sukuna's max is Dabura's min. So Dabura has higher damage output than Sukuna. This is not a question. Now let's look at Gojo. Now Gojo has relative damage output to Sukuna in terms of his Fuga. Okay? With Gojo's Hollow Purple, he can achieve similar feats. However, the reason why I put Gojo below both of them is because the conditions for him to activate his highest damage output are much more problematic than Sukuna's. All Sukuna has to do is cut his opponents once or twice, and he can use Fuga whenever he wants. All Dabura has to do is just run really fast. There are literally no other variables he has to worry about. He doesn't have to worry about whether he's landing attacks on his opponents before. He just has to run really fast. Okay? Gojo has to do incantations, like really long-ass incantations. He has to have help from Utsuhime, Gakuganji, and Ichichi to achieve the 200% Hollow Purple, which is his highest damage output Hollow Purple ever seen in the manga. Then we put him up against Sukuna in those final chapters 236, and he uses a similarly strong, but most likely not as strong Hollow Purple. And he has to make so many incantations along with his red and blue merging it is a very difficult condition to achieve in comparison to Fuga and Lightspeed Kick. So I am definitely putting Gojo at the bottom of this comparison in terms of his damage output. So let's make this very clear. 10. Sukuna, I'm giving him a 7, okay? Maybe even a 6. I'm going to give him a 7 just to be nice. And then Gojo, I'm probably giving him a 5, okay? Strength, let's look at strength, okay? I should also add hand-to-hand combat, honestly, yeah. That is an important stat as well. Hold on. Sorry about that, guys. Hold on, I can just do. That's fine. Okay, let's look at strength, okay? Now, this is not counting CT because that is more into damage output. Pure strength, not really using the CT, okay? In terms of this, I would probably put it to Sukuna in terms of number 1, then Gojo number 2, then Dabura number 3. Now, the problem with Dabura is he hasn't actually shown us many feats of him actually punching people and kicking people without using his CT. Dabura uses his CT for almost everything, and that's not a bad thing. It increases his damage output to a higher level than both Sukuna and Gojo, which is extremely good, but it doesn't do well for his strength feats as we have no showings. So because of this, I am going to be giving Sukuna a probably a 7 or 8, and he's at the top range, right? I think I'm going to give him 8. Then I'm going to give Gojo a probably a 6. Now you might be thinking, oh no, more Gojo versus Sukuna. But the problem is that you guys don't understand how Sukuna is actually much stronger than Gojo in terms of strength. And you might think, no, they were relatives, they were relative. Okay, no, they weren't. Gojo was at his very prime during the Gojo versus Sukuna fight. He had trained and he was fully ready for that fight. Sukuna was in Megumi's body, which is a heavy physical nerf. It is a heavy physical nerf. You might be thinking, what do you mean it's a nerf? You can't nerf someone by making a vessel because of the vessel. Yes, you can. The strength of the vessel is indicative of the strength of the incarnated sorcerer or curse. And this has been stated in the manga. I can't actually bring it up because I don't remember where it was in the manga, but it was stated in the manga that the stronger the vessel is, the stronger the incarnated sorcerer is. You could prove me wrong on this. I am like 90% sure that I'm correct on this. If you can prove me wrong, go ahead. If someone wants to prove me right, then I would appreciate that. I do remember in the manga it's stating somewhere that that's the case, but I could be wrong. 10% chance. Because of this, you can clearly see that Megumi's body, in terms of physique, in terms of physicals, is not on the level of special grade. His physicals are on the level of a grade 1 sorcerer. Meanwhile, Sukuna his true body is at arguably the peak of special grade. And Sukuna was using Megumi's body, which means all of his physical feats and anti-feats against Gojo in their fight are nerfed feats. Basically, he is nerfed that entire fight physically. And I'm not saying that Sukuna was stupid for taking over Megumi. He wasn't. He got an additional CT, 10 Shadows, one of the best CTs in the entire verse to fight Gojo. And you can't really argue, oh, he was a fraud because he needed Megumi's CT to beat Gojo. Name one character apart from Dabura who can, and probably Takaba, that can beat Gojo without Megumi CT. You can't, because there are barely any curse techniques that can get by Gojo's Infinity. It's not really fair to call Sukuna a fraud for something like that. Not to mention that sorcerers are scammers by nature. They're not heroes. They are scammers who will get the best that they can to win a fight. Megumi has stated multiple times that sorcerers aren't heroes. In his fight against Reggie Reggie directly stated that the pure nature of a sorcerer is being a scam, which is actually perfectly indicative of what sorcerers really are. And then you take Sukuna's feats against the anti-Sukuna squad in the Shinjuku. And holy shit, this guy had some pretty impressive feats. He knocked out Maki with a Black Flash, and considering how durable Maki actually is, that's incredible. He is definitely getting strength, okay? However, it is not as much of a gap as I would think. I would probably put Dabura at a 4. Alright? Then hand to hand, again, Sukuna. You might be saying, no, it's Gojo, but it's not. Again, he was heavily nerfed during that fight against Gojo. Sukuna was not in his true form. He was using Megami's body, which is heavily nerfed in comparison to his true form. Okay? So all of those feats are a nerfed Sukuna in terms of his physique. So I am definitely giving that to Sukuna. I'm giving him a 10, in fact. Gojo, I'm giving him maybe an 8 or a 7. I'd say an 8. I don't think it's that big of no 7. In terms of Dabura, he doesn't have any feats, so I'm again giving him a 4. Combat speed. It's going to Dabura. And you might be thinking, why is it going to Dabura again? Like, what are you talking about? But think about it carefully, okay? Oh, sorry, I gave CE efficiency to Dabura by accident. That was supposed to go to Gojo. Sorry about that, guys. Combat speed. All right, again, I stated before, his curse technique doesn't allow his body to go to light speed, not his projectile attacks. His projectile attacks were never stated to not be light speed. So these light speed attacks provide him excellent combat speed. And in fact, he completely nerfs these. He completely dwarfs these two in terms of combat speed. So I am actually gonna, in terms of combat speed between Gojo and Sukuna, I'm definitely giving Sukuna the edge, but not a wide margin. I'm probably gonna give Sukuna a not even a 5, honestly, not even 4 or 3, because that's how much Dabura dwarfs them in terms of combat speed. And then Gojo, I'm giving it 2. And you might be thinking, this is straight up favoritism or cope, but it's not. These characters haven't gotten to sub light speed. In fact, in light of that, how about I just boost them up a little bit? Okay? I'm going to give 5 and 4. Okay? I'm being generous here in my opinion, but I'll do this if you guys are going to complain. Travel speed actually goes to Gojo. And you might be thinking, oh, you've been talking about how fast Dabura is, right? But the fact of the matter is that travel speed isn't completely indicative on your physical speed. It is how fast you get from point A to point B. And Gojo wins this due to his blue. Gojo can literally teleport. Instantaneous teleportation, which gets you from point B to point A or point A to point B in an instant, is better than light speed travel. So I'm giving Gojo a 10, and I'm giving Dabura a 9. Then Sukuna. Sukuna is getting a bit power cliffed in this category. I'm probably going to give him like a 7. No, 6. That's more fair. CE capacity goes to Sukuna. That is not what I was trying to do. What the hell? CE efficiency goes to Gojo. Sorry about that. I've been making so many mistakes for some reason in terms of the placement of this 110. Sukuna has the highest CE capacity out of these 3. I'm not hearing it, okay? Sukuna fought Gojo and then the entire verse pretty much. And he didn't once run out of cursed energy. At all. He never once ran out of cursed energy after fighting that many people. His cursed energy was so potent that no one in the verse could destroy his fingers, his cursed object fingers. Okay? Sukuna is getting a 10 out of 10 for CE capacity. Now, here's the fact of the matter, okay? Gojo is still 3rd place in terms of CE capacity under Yuta and Sukuna. So he still has a very impressive feat. In fact, Yuta, when stating he has more CE than Gojo, everyone takes this as an amazing feat, and it is, okay? Because Gojo is shown to be like incredible across every category. All right, so I'm gonna give this the benefit of the doubt and give him um probably an 8. Okay, and in terms of Dabra, we don't have enough feats out of him yet in terms of his CE capacity. But he hasn't gotten exhausted yet, even though he's been fighting Maharaga. So that is a feat in itself. I'm going to give him a 6. If he was showing a bit of exhaustion in terms of his CE, then I would probably rate him lower than that, but I'm not going to because he's doing pretty well. CE efficiency, again, Gojo, I'm stating again, he's the best in this, alright? But I'm going to say that Sukuna also has great feats in terms of CE efficiency since he did last that long against Gojo and the Shinjuku squad. I'm going to give him probably a 7. In terms of Dabra, I don't know about Dabra. It's very hard to scale him in terms of some of these categories. I'm probably going to give him a 6, just because we haven't, not even 6, maybe 4? Yeah, I'll probably give him 4. Because we haven't really seen enough feats in terms of CE efficiency. This man has not done a Black Flash like Gojo and Sukuna have. We can't really say that he has comparable or relative CE efficiency. CE output, on the other hand, for CE output, honestly, it is indicative to a certain extent of damage output. So I'm probably going to give CE output to Dabura. But honestly, yeah, I'm going to give it to Dabura. So I'm going to give Dabura probably a 10. Then I'm going to give Sukuna probably an 8. And then Gojo probably a 7. Okay? You know what? Let's check how everybody's doing. Right now, it's pretty even, actually. The fight is looking pretty even 75, 75, 77, right? So Gojo is in the lead currently, okay? While Sukuna and Dabura are tied right behind him. So let's go into adaptability. I don't want to hear it. Dabura has the best adaptability out of these three. His technique is the most versatile out of these three. The only one that you can even argue being as versatile is Gojo's, but Gojo, in terms of adaptability, you can't really argue that very much. Both Gojo and Sukuna, you can't really argue in terms of adaptability. Gojo, because his CT is so freaking versatile that you don't really need to worry too much about having to have a plan or anything like that, right? I think that you could argue that, yeah, sure, his technique is versatile, but in terms of actual adaptability, he hasn't shown that many feats. Dabura just shows better adaptability feats. Like in the Maharaga fight, he was like, "Oh, my techniques aren't working anymore. Oh, my light speed kick didn't work because his technique seems to adapt faster to blunt force damage. Okay, I'll learn 3 RCT and then I'll learn all these other things." It shows his adaptability and his IQ. All right, so I'm giving Dabura a 10 in terms of adaptability. I am probably going to give Sukuna a better score in terms of adaptability than Gojo. I'm probably going to give him probably 7. And then I'm going to give Gojo a 5. Right? Battle IQ, Sukuna wins. It's not even close. He has some of the best battle IQ in the entire series. Gojo, I wouldn't say he had better battle IQ than Dabura. I'd say they're pretty relative, so I'm going to make this a tie, and I'm going to put it like probably 7, 7, right? So now Gojo is in last place, and Sukuna and Dabura are still tied. IQ definitely goes to Dabura. And you might be saying, why? Why? You're glazing, you're glazing. I'm not glazing, guys. Dabura learned RCT in a single, like literally a single chapter, and he barely even had any knowledge about it. He didn't know it existed. Nobody tried to teach him, and he figured it out. Okay, he just theorized and figured it out. All he needed was Maharaga's positive energy from the blade and knowing that Earthlings can heal people using cursed energy. That's all he needed to know to figure out how to use RCT. Then he used reversal in literally the next chapter. In literally the next chapter. And you might be thinking, okay, that's not indicative. Yes, it is. IQ is indicative of your ability to learn. Intelligent characters are indicative of their ability to learn. If your intelligent character is not learning and is just ass pulling his way through everything, then he is not a character that is written as intelligent. He is a superpowered individual. And you might be thinking, well, doesn't that apply to Dabura? No, he has shown his very easy thought process. He has just been able to theorize things pretty easily. Dabura didn't go into trying RCT with the expectation that he would succeed. He went into it thinking maybe this will work, and he got it off, right? And it is not a hard train of thought to actually follow. He noticed these things and then made conclusions. This is the writing of an intelligent character. Okay? In terms of comparing these now, I'd say that honestly that Sukuna does not have as many learning feats as Gojo. Gojo at least learned RCT on screen. Sukuna did not have that same learning on screen. And you might be saying, well, Sukuna learned World Cutting Slash. But Sukuna used the template formed by Mahoraga. So it's a bit of a nerf to his learning feat in terms of that. Because he needed Mahoraga to learn the World Cutting Slash. So I am giving Gojo the advantage here. I'm probably giving him honestly a 6 or a 5 because he's getting power clipped by Dabura. 5, honestly. And then Sukuna a 3. Okay? Durability feats Sukuna wins without a doubt. He ran the entire verse, okay? And he took so much damage. Now, let's take into account his fight against Yuji. Yuji used 8 consecutive black flashes against this man, right? Each time, Yuji was probably getting a better understanding of cursed energy and closer to his full potential each time he used it, right? And this man tanked that shit and kept fighting. Sure, it probably hurt like hell, alright? No one is denying that. But he tanked it and kept fighting. That is insanity. Then we take into account Gojo and Dabura, alright? The problem with Gojo in this category is that he barely has any durability feats because he never really has to rely on his durability or endurance, right? Both of these characters, they don't have to rely on this kind of crap. So I'm probably going to give it to Dabura in terms of this, and I'm gonna probably give him a 5 because he's still getting absolutely power cliffed. Maybe even a 4, but I'm gonna be nice and give him a 4, 5. 4 for Gojo. Endurance is similar. 10. In terms of endurance, yeah, 5, 4, same stats. I think they're all these characters have relative durability and endurance. Okay. Reaction time. Okay, let's look at reaction time. Okay. Dabura is going to win this, and you might be thinking, why would Dabura win reaction time? And here's the clear factor. Okay. Dabura is moving at light speed, and he is still able to pull off moves. Okay. When you are moving at light speed, things become very hard to perceive because you are moving so fast that everything looks like a blur. And yet Dabura was still able to perceive Mahoraga and attack him. This shows the best reaction time feat in the entire series. It's not glaze, it's simple logic, okay? Read the manga, please. If you want to deny this, please read the manga and acknowledge the fact that he was able to pull off a move while moving at sub-light speed. Okay? That is an insane feat and not one to be discounted. We are giving that to Dabura. And then we're giving the next one to Gojo. And I'm probably going to say this, but I'm putting it at probably a 5. Then Sukuna gets a 4. Because Sukuna and Gojo are pretty relative, actually. Actually, I'd probably give Sukuna a 3. Because the 6 eyes, I don't know, a 6. Because the 6 eyes is pretty good at reacting to things, okay? This means that Dabura is in the lead, Sukuna is in second, Gojo's in third, okay? RCT easily goes to Dabura. It's not a question about it. You might be thinking, what are you talking about? Dabura just learned RCT in the past few chapters. Yeah, and he used it to the same level as Gojo. Remember that Gojo used RCT and he reformed his entire arm after he was cut off by Maharaga? Well, Dabura did basically the same shit with his leg on his first try. Reverse curse technique is not that easy to use. Gojo got to that level of RCT after years and years of practice and learning. Dabura did that shit on his first try. He is power cliffing these two in terms of RCT. Not even close. Please don't even try to argue about it. No. Okay? Just no. Don't even try to argue about it. No. In terms of Gojo, because of the fact that we haven't actually seen Dabura use more advanced RCT than Gojo, and is just relative, I will be fair and give Gojo a 9. Even though I do think that Dabura power cliffs him, there hasn't been any showings of Dabura using superior RCT. Just equal, and with less time to learn how to do it. Okay? Then Sukuna, I'll probably give a 7. Okay? Reversal techniques. I know that Dabura has a reversal now, but he hasn't used it to actually attack someone, which is a problem because of the fact that it doesn't actually have any feats. But at least he has something. So I'm gonna give Gojo a. I'm gonna give him a 7, okay? And I'm gonna give Dabura a 5, and I'm gonna give Sukuna a 0 because he doesn't have a reversal technique. Sukuna literally has 0 reversal technique. Domain expansion. Oh, this is the most contested category, but Dabura is already winning. Okay. Gojo's domain expansion is definitely best out of these 3. Okay. If he pulls it off, neither of them are surviving this shit. They're getting murdered. Okay. Then we take into account Sukuna's domain expansion, and again, this is a really good domain expansion because it will literally win any clash of domains. So, yeah, that is a significant factor to consider, okay? So, honestly, I think these two are tied in terms of their domain expansions because this is a very significant thing to consider. Wait, why does it say? Oh, that's the wind chemical. Sorry. So, yeah, these two are pretty equal. Now, Dabura's domain expansion is very new, and you might be saying, okay, he just learned domain expansion. No, there is a high possibility that Dabura has always had this domain expansion, and that it's just been a card he's been keeping up his sleeve. And you might be talking, what are you talking about? And when you're reading the manga, you might be thinking, oh, this is becoming a pattern. He's learning shit off the bat. But there's been no statement that Dabura just learned it. He stated in the manga from the translation, the scanulation, so it's not confirmed. But based on the scanulations, it stated, does this technique also exist on Earth? This is implicit of Dabura already having this technique and wondering if humans can also use it. Which means that his domain expansion is not unrefined, it definitely has some level of refinement. And then we're talking about what if Dabura gets off his domain expansion first? If Dabura gets his domain expansion first, then Infinity is not saving Gojo because his short hit effect is on, and Dabura's lightspeed projectiles are now short hit, which means that he does not have to worry about getting past his thing. This means that his domain expansion is a lot better than people expected. I'm probably going to give him an 8. I don't think his domain expansion is on the same level as Sukuna and Gojo, but I do think that it's very impactful in this fight. So considering all these factors, we see a clear winner being Dabra. And considering everything we've seen, I honestly think that this whole thing, I think, wow, sorry, I'm having a hard time saying this. I've been talking a long time without any water. Um, Stay hydrated, guys. Stay hydrated. We're seeing that Dabura is 10 points ahead of Sukuna, and Sukuna is only 1 point ahead of Gojo. Okay? If we had a more direct comparison between Sukuna and Gojo, this result might differ to a certain extent. But since Dabura is involved in this conversation, this is the extent of what we're getting. Okay? Um, Obviously, my system, I do think this is accurate, but there could be differences as well, I'm saying, if we're doing comparison between just two characters. Okay? Um, so taking this into account, Dabura is first place, Sukuna second, and Gojo is third. Gojo and Sukuna are far more relative, while Dabura is far ahead. Okay, so um, let's take this into account, okay, and show what we're going to have to say. This is actually a very close matchup. It is not as power cliffed as people believe. Dabura has not power cliffed them as much as people believe at all. Okay, this is mostly because Dabura just doesn't have enough feats. I fully believe that there could be a possibility of Dabra power cliffing these two, but it just hasn't been shown enough yet. But yeah, he still wins. So yeah, Dabra Karaba is the strongest or second strongest character in JJK currently, with the only character probably being able to compete with him being Yuji. Okay, and I don't want to do a comparison between Yuji and these three yet because he has even less feats than Dabra in terms of these categories. The feats that Yuji has is damage output, CT, um, CE output, Black Flash, so CE efficiency, obviously, and then probably, yeah, that's pretty much it. He doesn't have any other feats in these categories, and I'm talking about modular Yuji. His other feats from JJK manga original aren't enough to scale to these two guys. Okay, Um, these guys power cliff JJK manga Yuji in terms of these categories. JJK modulo Yuji doesn't have enough feats in these other categories where he doesn't have feats or they're not significant enough. In terms of these other feats, though, he is definitely out overpowering these characters. It's very contested. That'll be all. We'll see you guys later.